The best brands define their PR wow in a clear, concise, and compelling way to attract major media coverage, fans, and sales. Find out their marketing and public relations secrets today on 8 Second Branding with host Liz H. Kelly. Liz is the founder of Goody PR and the author of 8 Second PR. In each episode, she brings you the stories behind some of the best brands, CEOs, and authors. Plus, she explains how media appearances alone are 3 times more valuable than any paid ad. Now, here's your host, Liz Kelly.
Hello, this is Liz Kelly Live with 8 Second Branding, the podcast, and we have a great new episode that is so timely about influencer marketing and specifically women with our guest, Jessie Grossman. And Jessie is the founder of Whim, W-I-I-M. She's going to tell us all about it, and her website is imwhim.com. So Jessie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to chat all things influencer marketing with you.
Absolutely. So tell us more about this program and how you got it started. I know your background is you were in entertainment for a while, right? And managing talent, and then you shifted to this.
It is, yeah. So that's sort of where my roots lie. So many people get into influencer marketing in like different ways. No one really comes at it through the same path. So mine is that I used to represent actors in commercials. Back before that, I was, directing theater. So my roots are there. That's why I ended up in New York 10 plus years ago. But yeah, so about Whim, Whim is the community that I wish I had when I transitioned into representing influencers. I had so many more questions and answers. I wanted to meet other people who were in the industry, who were trying to navigate it the best that they could so that we can share information with each other to just like help each other out. Being in New York, there's so many networking groups. There's media groups and, film groups and things like that. But I would go in there and nobody really had enough to say about influencer marketing. This is going back years ago. So I created it. So we today, many years later, at our core, we're still a networking organization. You'll meet the most incredible women. We did make it a women's only group. It's something I'm super, super passionate about. You'll meet other women in the industry. We're a resource. So we've got casting, we've got recruitment. So many people are hiring these days. We've also got, master classes about everything from, the tips and tricks on TikTok, YouTube and all the platforms, to whitelisting, pricing, how to find the best influencers, you name it. And, we're a community and a resource really for women in the industry. That's all about Whim.
I love it. I love it. So just so everybody knows, Whim stands for Women in Influencer Marketing, and they have 4,500 members. You can join, you can be a member. They also have 300 brands, and the brands can hire the influencers, I assume. They have 150 talent managers, and they're in 30 states across the United States. So can you talk a little bit more about how that works among those different groups?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that we're happily struggling with all the time, right? It's like, I want to make sure that all of our members feel served. And despite feeling like we're a pretty niche group, not only influencer marketers, but women influencer marketers, we're actually fairly broad in that we do encompass groups. We've got talent managers, we've got brands, we've got agencies, PR firms, influencer technologists, sort of all of those people who all have different needs. The beauty of it is that they all, as part of the group, interact so well with each other. Brands are looking for influencers. Well, great. We have talent managers. We don't really interact with the influencers themselves, but all their talent managers who represent equally hundreds of incredibly vetted talent, they can be connected with them. Obviously, brands looking for great ad agencies or PR firms to represent them, they're in the group. So everyone just finds themselves the best partners for them in the group. We've got things like we have our Facebook community, which is like a private Facebook group just for members. That alone has about 3,500 women in it. That was like our first our first piece of property on the internet for Whim was actually that Facebook group. And it still exists today. It's incredibly engaged. And it's just a great way, like in real time, to say like, oh my gosh, like Instagram launched this new feature. How do we interact with it? How do we deal with this change, that change? And if there's anything constant about influencer marketing is that it's constantly changing. So it's a great way to network, to ask questions, share resources. And it's really like the heartbeat of our organization.
I love that. I love that idea because so many of my referrals, and I think in any business, come from warm recommendations from a friend or a previous client. And women, because we are so focused on relationships, I would think that's pretty broad for women, how their businesses can grow and flourish. So I want to go back to one thing you said, though, about how influencer marketing keeps changing, because I think we've all seen it evolve over the past 10, 15 years. And one of our first clients hired us, and they were a technology company. And we did this influencer thing with them, but it was really what I would call cryptic. We just called 10 of our friends, really 20, and got 10 there, who were technology influencers, and got them to the launch party for this technology company. And we said, just sit here and tweet, and we gave them gift bags. And what's great about that company, I can announce who it is. Its name is Jukin Media, Jukin, Jukin. Jukin Media just got bought by the parent company is Reader's Digest. So you go back to, this was in, I think, 2013, and I'm just calling my influencer friends, you got to come to this party because we got to launch this tech company. And so where are we now? I guess if you were working with that tech company, what would you tell them now?
Yeah, no, that's a great story. And it's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, like, the starting place is always like, what are your goals, right? And everybody's goals are different. And I think it's really like the role of a strategist to be able to come in and say, here are the goals that are even achievable. Sometimes you don't even know what they are, right? So, maybe it's attending an event, maybe it's growing their social media presence, maybe it's brand awareness, maybe it's conversions. The list sort of goes on, but it's really there's actually a lot of upfront work, a ton of upfront work that really should take place before ever even diving into the core of the work of influencer marketing, which is engaging with those influencers, fine-tuning what that content actually looks like, getting it live, distributing it, everywhere. There's so much upfront work, just like identifying the goals, realizing what's realistic for the short term and what's more realistic as a long-term goal, and how to strategize that. So for a tech company in particular, yes, it's probably about conversion. So many people, right? You're doing this, you're investing good money into it. So absolutely, you'd love to see it convert. So it's like, okay, so if I'm really looking to convert, where are tech influencers more? I would think that like a longer form video content would be probably more ideal for a tech influencer, so they can really show the product. You can really get a sense of it. That would be, YouTube, maybe longer form TikToks now that they're up to 3 minutes. They just extended that a couple months ago at this point. And then just deep diving into that community. You can use tools like our casting service to connect with managers. You can use influencer tech search and discovery platforms. We just had a great event literally last week about that. There's a ton of ways to identify them, but then you want to dig into, well, what are their beyond the vanity metrics? How do they really engage with their community? Is their community as aligned with us as they are? Because let's say, for example, we have, a tech influencer, but there are tech influencers whose audience might be more consumer tech versus, like like 3D printers that they're building, at their home. So it's really identifying the audience is way more important, actually, usually, than the influencer themselves. And then constructing what that partnership looks like. You were talking earlier about relationships. I mean, that is something huge when it comes to influencer marketing. It's not a one-time see you later type of partnership. That's not a partnership, right? A real partnership has a relationship, and that's usually more than a one-time engagement. So really cultivating what that could look like, leaning into the people that really work for you, who are enthusiastic about your brand. But more than anything, if I can leave any parting words about how to identify influencers, it's really making sure that their audience is aligned. Because at the end of the day, that's who you're looking to convince to buy your product, right?
I love that. And you just reminded me of something really important that was also in that Jukin Media campaign. And that was, I wanted to have a social good component. And I know Whim is also focused on being a force for good. And so I asked them to think carefully about, what would be a charity that would be related to their business, and how could we partner with them? And it turns out that Rob Deerdeck, who I never heard of before working with them, but Rob Deerdeck is a big deal on MTV, and he has a show, MTV Ridiculousness. And they actually, Juka Media, what they do is video clipping services. So your idea of a video campaign is spot on. He did not have any time, but we did not give up as a team. We worked all our relationships, and we got agreement that we were going to support the Rob Deerdeck Foundation. And then we did a silent auction of some of his skateboards, because he had done a skateboard park for underprivileged kids in Los Angeles. And so the money was going to go to the Rob Deerdeck Foundation. So that worked out really well too. Do you do that where you work with celebrities?
So, I mean, my roots, like I mentioned, were actually working with actors. And when I built the influencer division there, it was really like this in between of some actors that they represented who were more celebrities and on social for that reason, right? Or they had grown on social for that reason. So, they had an Instagram, but they launched a TV show or a film, and that's where they got a big following. So yeah, absolutely. And there is definitely a distinction. That's what I learned, a huge distinction between working with influencers who are known because they're on social versus influencers who are known for other projects, whether they're on TV or film or whatever. Audiences treat them very differently. Like their followers feel like they can, leave more like they can scrutinize them a lot more if they're celebrities. Things have probably shifted in that capacity, and probably the internet's just will just unleash on anyone. But, managing their careers are different. And, that's my background, is managing influencers' careers. So it depends on what they want to do with it. At the end of the day, influencers who are known by being on a TV show, like they're not going to, usually their influencer partnerships, like brand partnerships, they're supplementary to their work on TV or film. But influencers, like they're doing this full time. Maybe they want to also be in TV and film, but basically depending on what their goals are, it's a different strategy,
I think that's a really good point about what's the definition of an influencer, because there's a lot of different types. The person with 1 million followers versus the person with a TV show are very different, as you said. So can you give me an example of the perfect match you put together, or a campaign that you love as an example of influencer marketing?
Yeah, sure. Like a successful brand partnership. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm always one for like putting together partnerships that are like continuously thinking outside the box. People these days are like hesitant to get on platforms like TikTok, for example. I was having this conversation with somebody just yesterday. about, do you really think it's relevant to, do you think it's timely for people to get on TikTok, or do you think they should wait? Like, do you think the platform virality should sort of calm down first? I just think the approach needs to be different. So I've seen brands who really lean fully into what TikTok is, and it's different, and they get it and they nail it. They'll create a challenge or a certain music, a certain song that people are using. They will use influencer like friends, like in people who are influencers, but they're friends, and they sort of create like a movement of people that you want to be a part of that group. They'll all create the content together. I've seen really interesting use cases on TikTok, YouTube, especially. Instagram, people sort of get like, they get stuck in their ways a little bit. I feel like longer ambassadorships have worked really, really well these days, because you give influencers a little bit, like you invest in them and you're like, you know what? I love your work. It's very aligned. Let's do 6 months instead of like a one-off post. They will give you so much more in return by just giving them a little bit and really showing that you believe in them, invest in their business. It's like anybody at the end of the day, like, you want to work with people that you like. You want to work with people that you feel good about. So it's like any employee, you treat them well, they'll treat you well in return. Specifically for, successful partnerships. It's interesting. I've seen them happen a lot on TikTok lately, but I've also seen ones that don't work. So if there's any parting advice I could leave, it's either know TikTok yourself, right? Like really lean into the culture that is TikTok before activating on it, or hire somebody who does, because a strategy that could work really well on Instagram will not translate to any other platform. They're all very unique from each other,
Absolutely. I think those are excellent points. So let's see, if you can tell us what is the range of what people get paid, because everybody probably wants to know, how much can I get paid as an influencer? And one example that I was talking about before we hit record was the Sundance Film Festival, which is like the mecca of influencer marketing. All the brands want to be there, but the majority of them just give you free stuff. They give you a free mug or a free t-shirt or a free hat. And then they want you to write about them or tweet about them. So what is the range, and what do they get paid to do?
Yeah, so great question. I will tell you the largest deal that I ever worked on was a little over $200,000 for 1 year-long partnership for one influencer. And then I don't know, when I was starting out, I think my first deal was worth like $500 and I was thrilled, like this is going back pretty far. It's a huge range, and there are influencers making way more than that, if you could believe it. And then there are influencers who are getting gifted, product. I always say like product, a pair of shoes isn't going to pay anybody's bills. I think that at this point, in influencer marketing and like the creator economy, and as far as we've come in the industry and professionalizing it, it can be insulting to people if you're asking them to do work for you and offering them to pay them in something other than money. That being said, there are circumstances, it was an interesting conversation I had just the other day. And she's like, but if I don't have, I go to an influencer, I approach an influencer and I'm saying, I would like, let's say 2 Instagram posts and, no exclusivity, sort of basic usage, no whitelisting, but I'd like a couple of posts from you. What do you charge? And they come back and they say, maybe they say $10,000. That would be sort of like a mid-tier influencer would quote something like that. And maybe the brand says, I'm sort of starting out, or I just haven't allocated that type of budget to working with you. Her opinion, which I kind of agree with, she's like, instead of like lowballing somebody, starting off the relationship on that point, right? Like at that point, or disappointing them or just not meeting their rate. She's like, I would rather say, let me come back to you once we've sort of evolved and grown as a brand, or allocated more budget from, our TV commercial spends to our influencer marketing spends. But what I'd like to do now, no strings attached. I'm just going to gift you some product to see how you like it, like mess around with it. If you want to post about it, fantastic, but like no pressure whatsoever. But I just want to get it in your hands. I think we're really aligned with each other. And I think it would be great for, I'd love for you to experience it. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. So I'm going to send it to you. What's your address? And that goes over so well. Her point is, if I don't have the budget, I don't want to start the relationship, lowballing them and, saying half the rate. I'd rather just be very transparent and send them some free products, but have no strings attached. Don't say, okay, so I'm going to give you free product. I'm not going to pay you, but can you sign this contract? But like, I'm going to sign a contract. You don't know how many times I've seen something like that. So I think that just by like treating influencers as human beings, respecting what they do, and, whenever you're expecting something in return, treating it like a business relationship. I would never ask somebody to do something for me in my professional life, personal life, anything for free. So influencer marketing is really no different.
That is such a great example. I love that one about just, we don't want to lowball you, because most people will try to put the pressure on and get you to do it for free, or, hand you the mug. Anyway, it's just a great evolving process. So we've just got a couple minutes left, but tell us about why you chose to work with women and how that's working out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so lucky because I get to work not just with any women, but like the most incredible women tend to gravitate towards this group. I don't know. I can't explain why it is, but honestly, like the most impressive women I've ever worked with and I've worked with in a like I mentioned, and, acting and whatever, when I was directing and managing talents, et cetera. I have found the most incredible women gravitate towards influencer marketing and this group. It's something that I'm so passionate about, which is just women in business in general. Like I've sold a company and I would like to see many other women be able to do the same thing. I would like to see many women, whatever their goals are, whether it's to be entrepreneurs or to, be the CEO of a company or to negotiate really powerfully on their own behalf, or to be able to do whatever they set their mind to. It's a group of people that we're all cheering each other on. We're all supporting each other. It's, we are absolutely throw egos to the side and competitiveness aside, which is what I grew up in. That was my professional upbringing was, I witnessed a lot of, ton of competitiveness, never cheering other people on. It was always like, I'm going to beat you to it. And like, I don't care who I step on to get there. I witnessed that. And I was like, is that really like what the professional life is? Like, is that what I have to look forward to? And I didn't know, because it's all that I knew. I didn't know if there was a better way, but I thought in my mind, I was like, I would like to imagine that there could be. And so, I don't know if there's just a generational difference now, or the world has just changed a little bit, or we've just cultivated a little piece of, of the industry that happens to really promote that. But the community here is so open, shares contacts, resources, answers questions. Egos are truly checked at the door. And, if I sense a little bit of something else, I talk to them, because and I don't even have to in most instances, because they sort of see what's going on in the group. And if they sort of self-filter themselves out if they don't fit into that mold. So it's a really powerful place. It means something to me for so many reasons, mostly because I just want to see women that I respect and admire succeed. My ideal is that we're all sort of successful at the top together. And that's how you get yourselves there. You promote each other and you support each other along the way.
I think that's so important. And I totally agree. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know, and I didn't know until I started researching for a client with a diversity book, is that out of the Fortune 500 CEOs, I'll just ask you, what percent do you think are women? Fortune 500 CEOs. Just take a guess.
I knew this. I have another stat for you after this. My guess is probably, I don't know, 5% or under.
Well, you're not that far off. It was 6.8. And in 2021, we're up to 8.1% women are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Now that is horrible. when we are 51% of the population in the United States. So any groups that support women, I always try to help them and support them because, as you say, it's so important. So tell me about your stat. What do you refer to?
Yeah. So we recently had an event about VC funding. I think that no matter what industry you're in, it's just good to know sort of what your options are if you're an entrepreneur. Do you want to get VC funding or not, et cetera, et cetera. And during that event, I learned that less than 2% of VC funded companies are women-owned companies, less than 2%. And fortunately, with your stat, the number has gone up in the last year in terms of VC funding and how many of those companies have been women-owned. That stat has actually gone down in the last 2 or 3 years. So it's incredible. I mean, basically, we're talking about the year 2021 is when we're recording this. And it's just mind-blowing to hear, sub 10% of both of these statistics are showing a focus in women. I also am someone who I don't want to focus on the negative. It's good to know, you want to know all the information, but I just know that we can do a lot better than that. And I'm excited to.
We definitely can. And one of the numbers that I don't know that would be interesting would be looking at the number of entrepreneurs that are women, because I think with the pandemic, we've probably seen an explosion of more women saying, I'm not going back to the office. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to start that business I wanted to start. And maybe they're not in the statistics, but I bet that demographic has grown over the past year. That would be my guess. So before we go, is there anything that we missed that we should cover?
No, I mean, I think you did a great job. I think we covered so much of it. I mean, I would say, if anybody is interested in, I love chatting with, people one-on-one. I love introducing people to sort of the community and answering questions just about influencer marketing in general, whether or not you're new to it, interested in it, or you're a pro. So I would say if anybody wants to get in touch, you could always follow us. Our website, we mentioned earlier, it's iamwhim.com, and our Instagram is the same. And just get in touch. I'd love to connect with anyone listening.
Absolutely. So it's I am Whim, and Whim is WIIM.com. And all right, so my last question, which I like to ask, is if you're an influencer or a marketer, what could you do in 8 seconds to make an impact?
Oh, such a good question.
I know. Drum roll, drum roll.
I would just say familiarize yourself with, the landscape out there by just going on social media. When it's when I used to work in commercials, people would be like, how do you get into commercials? You watch commercials, you see what's out there, you get examples, you learn by doing. So I would say easy, just download the apps, search hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored. That's a good way to see who's working on sponsored campaigns on a variety of the platforms. You always have to disclose those partnerships, but sort of deep dive into it and see what's out there, and you'll see what's working. You'll see what influences you. That's how you do it. Check the platforms and see what actually influences you. And then, they're doing it right.
I love that. So it's hashtag sponsor or sponsored?
Sponsored, SPONSORED, or hashtag ad. Those are 2 very common ways to disclose a partnership per FTC guidelines. So go search on Instagram, hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored, and you'll see a ton of posts that are all, sponsored content. You'll see the brand tagged and see what people are creating these days and see what actually influences you. And, that's a good place to start.
Fantastic. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Jessie, and everybody. Again, go to iamwhim.com and check out the Women in Influencer Marketing group. Join, become a member, get involved, and check out that hashtag sponsored on Instagram to see what's out there. So thanks again, Jessie, and thank you to all the listeners out there, and come back. We'll have a new episode soon.
Do you want to increase your sales and word of mouth marketing by constantly being in headline news? Instead of getting lost at a big agency, Goody PR specializes in VIP service. where making your business look good is their top priority. Goody PR founder and best-selling author Liz H. Kelly has been there, done that, and built a team of PR professionals who have booked thousands of major media interviews for clients, including The Today Show, CNN, Fox News, BBC, NPR, and many, many more. Let them partner with you to find ways to magnify your brand so it emotionally connects and reaches your ideal audience. And the best part is that media interviews are 3 times more valuable than any paid ad. What are you waiting for? Email info@goodypr.com today. Set up a call to discuss how to get your story and business moving forward. That's info@goodypr.com. Thank you for tuning in for this edition of 8-Second Branding. Keep checking back for new shows featuring your host, Liz H. Kelly, on the Voice America Business Channel.